Welcome to Lesson 23, Research Questions and Researching. In this lesson, we're going to talk about research questions and researching. And originally, this was going to be split into two lessons, Lesson 23 and Lesson 24. But I've decided to combine both of those into this one lesson because I think it makes more sense to talk about them together. So we have 5 objectives for this lesson. So first, we're going to understand how to choose topics and how to shape topics into research questions. Second, we're going to understand how to research and evaluate sources using the internet. Third, we're going to understand how to research, access, and evaluate sources using the Cambridge College Online Library. After this lesson, I want you to complete Journal 6. So for Journal 6, I want you to choose 3 potential topics for your Essay 4 and frame each topic as a research question. So 3 topics, and then frame them as 3 research questions. Then, and I want you to pick the one that you like the best, and I want you to find 3 sources. So research using Google and the online library, one of your favorite research questions, and find 3 sources that speak to that research question. So then I want you to email me your 3 research questions and 3 APA references, 1 reference for each source that you found for your favorite research question. Send those to my email, brookswinchell@go.cambridgecollege.edu, and then wait for my response before moving on, because I'm going to have to sort of say if the question will work or not work before you move into Journal 7. So let's move on here. So in Lesson 22, I talked about research strategy, the most effective way to conduct research. You want to make sure you always start with a question. Hopefully you have that clear in your mind now. Then once you have a question, you want to research your question. That's what you're going to be doing after this lesson. As you're researching, you want to evaluate your sources. Are they good quality? Do they answer the research question? As you find sources that speak to the question, collect a pro and con list. What are some of the reasons for? What are some of the reasons against? And then you want to, so basically you're going to do all of this through Journal 6. And then once we get into Journal 7, you're going to solidify a thesis based on the pros and cons that you found in the research and design your essay with an outline, which we're going to talk about in Lesson 25. So as I mentioned, a research question is critical, but before you have a question, you need a more general topic. So we're going to talk a little bit about choosing topics in here and then shaping them into research questions. So a good research paper always starts with a controversial topic, a topic that invites some kind of controversy. So there are controversial topics all around us. If you just think about the news and the media, there have been lots of controversial topics lately, and there always are controversial topics in the news and media. So that's one place you could potentially find a topic. For instance, they've been talking a lot in the news about the Confederate flag in South Carolina. That's a controversy. Some people think it should come down, others think it shouldn't. They've also talked a lot about racism in police, right? Some people think police are racist. Some people think they're not. They're just doing their job. That's a good controversial topic too. Recently they've been talking about the nuclear deal with Iran and whether or not it was a good deal. Some people say yes, some people say no. All those make good controversial topics. So I think one of the best places to find a good research topic is to just consider the news and take topics from current events. Or think about political arguments you may have had with others, or political controversies, such as states legalizing physician-assisted suicide. I knew that was on the ballot a couple of years ago for Massachusetts. So those can make really good controversial topics too. But if you can't find anything in the current media, those will probably be your best topics because they're really relevant. You can also look at a list of controversial issues. If you just Google controversial topics or controversial issues, you can find plenty of websites that give you lots of different issues in a list. And you can kind of look through the list and decide which topic seems most interesting to you. Let's take a quick look at a website like that. Here's a list of controversial topics that you can find on Wikipedia. And this is a good use of Wikipedia too. So we can see Wikipedia splits controversial topics into political topics, such as abortion, or North Korea, the politics of North Korea. Capital punishment talks about capitalism. These are all good controversial topics in here. There's tons of them. There are some historical controversial topics. I'd probably try to stay away from these, but some could be interesting. There's slavery. You see religious controversial topics. I'd also probably try to stay away from those because they tend to rely more on opinion than on fact. Really good controversial topics are usually more science topics. These are definitely good. Abortion, alcoholism, Alzheimer's disease, all good topics. Birth defects, chromosome defects, you see obesity, all those are excellent controversial topics. Schizophrenia, sexuality topics, these could potentially be good. There's one on pedophilia right here, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in this lesson. Homosexuality could be a good topic. There's some on entertainment. Environment, definitely. Environmental topics are really good. Hydraulic fracking is a really good topic. Global warming is good. Mining, recycling, pollution, overpopulation, oil drilling, deforestation, ecoterrorism, all these are really good topics. Technology, also a great topic. Is Facebook, electric car. I would say that those technology ones tend to be the best topics. Either the social issues or the technology science issues tend to be the best topics for research papers because there are a lot of facts backing them up for and against, as opposed to more historical or religion, which are tougher topics to write papers on. So there's a pretty good one, example of a pretty extensive list of controversial topics, and this one just keeps going. Sports topics. So you might just check a list like this, so Wikipedia, if you're not sure which topic you might want to do. Let me back to the PowerPoint here. So try those couple of techniques, either consider what you see in the news or things you've discussed, or check a list, right? And that'll get you a good topic. However, notice that those topics are not necessarily good research questions because a topic is just a thing. For instance, abortion is just a procedure, not necessarily controversial in itself. Terrorism is just a thing, not controversial in itself. Self-driving cars are just a new technology, but not controversial in itself. That's why the research question is so important. You can't just have a topic because we don't know what's controversial about abortions. We don't know what's controversial about self-driving cars or terrorism. So the research question specifies that controversy, right? And the debate that surrounds your topic. So with self-driving cars, the controversy is whether or not we should produce self-driving cars. Are they a good idea, right? So now we have an idea of what the controversy is. We use the question to specify the sides. So some people might say self-driving cars offer many benefits, such as safety and convenience. However, other people could see self-driving cars as potentially having problems with safety and cost. That's the debate we'd want to get at. So a potential solution could be manufacturers produce them because of the benefits, or manufacturers not produce them because of the benefits. So then our question relies on that solution and becomes, should car manufacturers produce self-driving cars? That would be a good research question, because some people could say yes because of the safety and convenience. Some people could say no because of the safety and cost. So there's a good chance we're going to get some pretty good opinions on both sides here. So a couple things to keep in mind when you're framing your research questions is, as this last slide points out, one of the most important things I could tell you about research questions is that a good research question always specifies a solution to a problem, right? So one potential solution for self-driving cars is manufacturers make them. Another solution is they should not make them, right? So the question is, should they make them, right? The question always specifies a solution to a problem. A good research question, as I mentioned in the last lesson, always uses the word should or the phrase should not. And it passes the reasonable person test. A reasonable person could say yes, self-driving cars should be made. A reasonable person could say no, they should not be made. And it's manageable for a 5-page paper. It's not too big of a topic, I don't think. So here's a couple more examples of potential research questions. Should kids under 13 enter child beauty pageants? Great research question. Uses the word should, specifies a solution, child beauty pageants, or kids entering the child beauty pageants, and it passes the reasonable person test. Reasonable person could say yes, no, this would be manageable for a 5-page paper. So this is a good question. Should South Carolina have to take down the Confederate flag? Notice that this is a potential solution, South Carolina taking the flag down. Uses the question should, manageable for a 5-page paper. Reasonable person could say yes or no. Good question. Should mental health screening be required for gun purchases? Here's a solution to gun violence. Mental health screening being required. Uses the word should, which says, some people could say yes, some people could say no. It's pretty reasonable on both sides. And it's manageable for a 5-page paper. Nice question there too. Here's the last one. Should animal testing be banned for beauty products? Sorry, I meant to write products here. I guess I had pageants on the mind. Some people could say yes, some say no. It specifies a solution, banning them. Probably manageable for a 5-page paper. Might be a little bit long, but I think specifying beauty products as opposed to just general animal testing would help to make this more manageable for a 5-page paper. So that's a good question too. So hopefully that gives you the idea of choosing a question and honing it as a research question and some of the tools you can use to hone as a research question. So your first step in Journal 6 is going to be to choose 3 potential topics and narrow each one of those topics into a specific research question. So keep in mind what we looked at in the last few slides here when you're doing Journal 6, right? First, find a topic. Right? Don't worry about it being a question immediately. It could just be a single word or a thing. Right? And then once you have a topic, you want to specify that solution. Use these tips that I discussed on this slide in order to narrow it into a good research question. Right? Make sure it's a solution. Use the word should or should not. Make sure it passes the reasonable person test. Make sure it's manageable for a 5-page research paper. So once you have a good question, then you want to turn to researching. And you want to use whatever sources are available to you. Right? We're not going to be doing field research for this essay or this class. We're just mostly going to be using library research, but you still could use Google, right, or another internet search engine. Most people feel comfortable with Google. It's a good place to start. You can find some good results on Google. However, you should definitely check the online library, and I want everybody to start considering and using the online library, because that's where you're going to find your better academic sources. And when you get into Writing 102, your professor is going to require that you use the online library and use academic sources. So you want to get comfortable with navigating that and using those sources. When you're researching, your primary goal should always be to find an answer to your research question. That's why you have the question. It's your touchstone. You can always refer back to it and say, does this article or this part of this article answer my question? Does it say yes, right, self-driving cars are good? Does it say no, self-driving cars are not good? So use that question constantly to refer to the research you're finding. So if your question is, should there be stricter laws for pedophiles, right, you need to answer that question definitively. A good successful argumentative essay will take a strong stance, yes or no, and give several reasons for and against while looking at counterarguments. So some of the reasons to say yes, there should be stricter laws for pedophiles could be because pedophilia causes psychological damage to kids. It causes physical damage to kids. It could cause behavioral issues for kids. Or it could cause trauma for parents. Those are all good reasons to say, yes, there should be stricter laws for pedophiles. And some of the reasons to say, no, there should not be stricter laws for pedophiles could be the laws are already pretty strict enough. The punishment is more severe than other punishments for comparable crimes, and maybe pedophiles are not completely able to control their behaviors or completely irresponsible, so it's unfair for them to have such harsh penalties. So those could be some of the potential reasons for and potential reasons against. So you want to do some kind of a brainstorm like this where you come up with potential pros and potential cons before turning to the research. Once you have some of those potential pros and cons, that gives you really good keywords. So we could create some keywords before we start researching based on some of those pros and cons. So some of the good keywords we're going to want to use in a search for this question would be pedophiles, child abuse, psychological trauma, physical, behavioral, punishments, sex offender, and registry. And that would kind of, I think, lead us to articles that will relate more to the question. And we're going to see why these keywords are so important in just a minute. So let's turn to our various sources with a couple of examples here. So let's start by using Google. Let me flip back to Google here. So here we have a Google search bar, right? Everybody's pretty familiar with it. So we can use Google to start researching some potential topics for pedophiles. So let's put in some of those keywords that I just mentioned. If we put in pedophiles and psychological, and let's just start more general, pedophiles and laws, or stricter laws. So if we do a quick search of this, we get a couple of websites: stricter laws against child molesters, stricter laws needed for pedophiles, and the rapists. So we're getting lots of articles in here. The one thing you want to be really careful about when you're using Google is that we're getting a lot of sources that are probably pretty biased, that we don't know that we can trust. Like, for instance, petition to Congress sounds like they're definitely not giving a fair look at this. BG Daily News, I'm not sure what that is. Yahoo Answers, stay away from it. The Daily Cougar, probably not good. The Tech Dirt, I wouldn't even go there. So we're getting some really questionable looking websites coming up first. Here's one from Time Magazine. So this one, we've heard of Time Magazine, probably pretty trustworthy, but that looks like the only website that's relatively trustworthy on here. Getting a lot of opinion websites, but this is from Time. I think you could definitely use Time. So death penalty for child molesters. So this article seems to talk about whether or not that's a good idea. I think this would be a really great place to start, and see what they say in this particular article. Let's go back to our list. So it could just be that particular set of keywords that was giving us some really odd biased results. Maybe if we do something a little bit more scientific with the topic, like pedophiles and psychological damage in kids, right? So notice how I'm using keywords. I'm in the habit of using keywords because you really need to do that when you're using the online library. So you always want to use single words and separate them by and. You get much better results that way. So let's see. So here we're getting more medical type websites. So these probably be a little bit better. WebMD you could use. They're typically written by doctors. It's not like an academic source, but you could potentially use it. Psychology Today is actually a really good psychology website. You could definitely use that. Always stay away from Wikipedia, because anybody can go on Wikipedia and edit the content. So you never know what you're getting on there. So you can use Wikipedia when you're looking like at list of controversial topics, but don't ever cite it in a paper. But we get, let me see, neuroanthropology.net, news.discovery. This one looks pretty good, and this one actually says 6 misconceptions about pedophiles. So this might be a pretty good article on the other side, defending pedophiles. Let's see what they have. It's a psychology website. It's written, it has a clear author, Eric Niler, and it seems to be about how pedophilia is a medical condition. So maybe this speaks to the idea that pedophiles aren't entirely responsible for their actions. Pedophiles, moral failure. So here's some misconceptions about us. This could be potentially a good place to start too. So we got a couple of articles just by using Google, changing up some of our keywords. We found that one article from Time Magazine that probably talks about whether or not they should get the death penalty. This one from Psychology Today could be okay. Then we found one from Discovery that could be okay. So that can be pretty good. So I would say just keep changing up your keywords. There's a good chance you could find most of what you want using Google, but you just want to be really careful to evaluate your sources carefully. I would stick to things that you know, that you've heard of, that you know are good quality, and not go to things like Joe's website that you don't necessarily know, right? Like Dry and Hall, I'm not sure who that is. You might stay away from that. But Google is a good place to start. Still, you'll notice when we're using Google, we're not finding any academic sources. Yes, WebMD might be written by a doctor, and same with Psychology Today, but they're not being published in medical journals, which are the highest quality sources that you can find. You're not going to find anything like that on Google, your best quality sources. For those types of sources, you're going to have to turn to research databases. And the only way you can access research databases is through a library. And fortunately, Cambridge College has access to many of these databases. So let me show you how to get onto the databases. If we go to cambridgecollege.edu and you click login, you have to log into your MyCC page. I'll log in so you can see. Put in your ID, and then you put in your PIN number. And that, whoops. Put in your ID, put in your PIN number, and that brings you to your home page. So on the home page, to get to the online library, you just click Library. And then yours might look slightly different than mine. When you click the online library, it should bring you, it might bring you to this page, LibGuides, but I think that's just mine. More than likely, yours will bring you straight to here. So this is the new Cambridge College Online Library homepage. So it's a pretty nice homepage. They have just some information about libraries in Cambridge, the Boston Public Library, which are physical libraries that you could go to. And then we have some tabs across the top here that indicate different services, right? Databases is going to be where you'll find all your articles. We'll go to that in a second. Here's some more information on traditional libraries. It tells us where we can find libraries around Lawrence or in Cambridge, the Gutman Library. There's some stuff on help with research if you get stuck doing research. It tells you how you can get in touch with some tutors. And we have tutors here in Lawrence. You can actually meet with me if you're here on the Lawrence campus. Just sign up for writing tutoring, and I can help you with a lot of research. There's some guides on avoiding plagiarism, which we talked a little bit about, and what plagiarism is and how you can avoid that. There's a little bit of reading and writing help on the library. Talks a little bit about taking notes effectively, motivation, learning to write research papers, 9-minute video on literature reviews, which you're going to have to do for your capstone, how to write an annotated bibliography, which you're going to have to do for writing 102. Talks a little bit more about scholarly articles, how to identify them, how to read them. So this is all really good stuff right here. I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we're looking through the databases, but this might be a good place to turn to. How do you read a scholarly article and how do you locate a scholarly article? Nice sources there. There's some specific ESL help, right? If English isn't your first language, there's some stuff on here that can help you to progress with your writing and your reading. There's APA style help. So we have the video on APA style, but you can also go to Purdue and they have a really good one. And then there's this Zotero. I probably wouldn't worry too much about this. This is more of a, if you're doing heavy research and you're a graduate student, you might use that, but I wouldn't worry about it otherwise. But let's go to the databases. That's where you're going to find all of your articles. So when we click on databases, we can see right here that there's a search for all subjects, right? So this is a nice place to start. If you do search for all subjects, it'll look for your keywords in all kinds of databases. And Cambridge College subscribes to about 30 or so databases. And here are all the databases that we subscribe to. There's the ebrary, for instance, which is an electronic database, right? And it gives you a description here. It's an electronic database of books. And there's about 6,000 new titles a year, and there's over 100,000 books on the ebrary. So search all subjects will turn up results in there, but if you're looking specifically for books, you might click on the ebrary link here and go directly to that database. Academic Search Premier is probably the best undergraduate database. So again, this will search that. But if you know you're looking for articles and you want to kind of keep it narrow, you might go specifically to Academic Search Premier. ERIC is an educational database, and so is Education Research Complete. So especially for education graduate students, or if you're doing an education topic, you might want to just look in these ones. Greenfile is a environmental database. If you have an environmental topic, that could be a good one to look at. Medline is medical topics. Newspaper Source is just all newspapers. PubMed, also medical articles. And then there's some psychology databases, Psych Articles, Psych Books, Psych Extra, Psych Info. Those are really good for psychology topics, like the pedophiles topic could be good for these ones. So you can definitely explore the databases, and the librarian gave some descriptions of each one if you want to learn more about them. But we could just start with a general search here. So I want to show you one thing real quick. If we were to just type in pedophiles, so let's just type in a whole bunch of words like this together and see what we come up with. It's searching right now. Notice it's searching across all these databases that I just pointed out. There's Psych Articles. We get nothing. See? If you did this in Google, you'd probably be okay. EBSCO is not quite as powerful as Google, so you really have to use those keywords. So if we do pedophiles and laws, right? We separate the two keywords using and. Now it'll look for these two keywords anywhere in the article, the title, or the abstract. So that's the best way to do a search in EBSCO, is separate all your keywords by using and. So if we search for this, searching to our databases, now we have 180 results, which is actually the maximum. There's probably like 2,000 results, but it only shows 180. And you see that we're getting lots of stuff that's from academic journals. It'll tell us the source type. These are going to be our best quality sources. These are usually better quality periodicals. Here's a book from the ebrary too. So we're getting returns from all different kinds of places. So we can definitely look at the titles: pedophiles and cyber predators as contaminating forces, the language of disgust, pollution, and boundary invasions in federal debates. So this one sounds like a kind of a complicated article, but it seems pretty interesting. It's definitely about the sort of wave we talk about pedophiles and maybe how we blow things out of proportion with anything related to pedophiles, which maybe speaks to them being overly chastised for their crimes. Censoring the sinful in cyberspace. Pedophiles have orientations too. That could be a good one. Defending pedophiles. But we're getting a lot of stuff that's older. So that one's from 98. This one was 2008, 2002. We probably want really more current stuff. So we can limit it over here with this slider. It's best to stick to within the last 5 to 7 years or so. So let's limit it here and see what happens when we slide the limiter. It refreshes our results, and it's going to turn us back to things that are all more current, right? So here everything's 2012, 2007, earlier stuff. So this is a review of a book. Online interactions involving suspected pedophiles. Let me see. Internet stings directed in pedophiles. Pedophiles in Wonderland, sensing the sinful. Uncovering monsters, lost opportunities. So these could be good. Nothing's really turning up. Child abuse, instructor laws. Let's try. Or sex offender. Let's do sex offender and laws. Let's see what we can come up with there. So changing the keywords is really the best step to getting the right results. Here we go. Preventative detonation of sex offenders, law and practice. Okay, so this is probably a really good one here. So this is from a law journal. Gender is a factor when calculating sex offenders' dangerousness. Another good one. So maybe women shouldn't be as strictly regulated as men. Views from the bottom and top. Lawmakers, practitioners, discussion, sex offender laws. So now we're on the right track. Now we're on the discussion about sex offenders. So it took a couple of cruel and unusual. Here's another one. Classifying sex offenders. So here we're getting all academic type stuff written in professional journals by doctors in the field. Time series analysis of effectiveness of sex offender notification laws in the USA. So maybe the laws aren't that effective. So if we like this one, if you click on the title, we get some information about the article and an abstract. Archival crime data of forcible rapes for all 50 states of the United States dating from 1960 to 2008 were analyzed using an interrupted time series design. For each state, rates of forcible rape prior to the passage of sex offender legislation were compared to rates of forcible rape after the passage of sex offender registration notification laws. So basically, they compared the rates before and after the laws went into effect. The results were mixed, with 17 states demonstrating significant drop in rates of forcible rapes following the implementation of sex offender laws, and 32 states demonstrating no discernible change. So mixed results. So maybe the sex offender registry isn't that effective. So maybe what we have to do is change our question slightly. So instead of should pedophiles have stricter laws, should sex offenders have stricter laws? It seems like we're getting better results with that word sex offender. So your research might actually help to change your question a little bit and to hone the direction of that question. So this looks like a nice article. If you want the article, you have to click PDF full text right here. So click PDF full text. The article will pop up. You have to open it. Here it is. We'll keep it on the side right there. So there's the article right here. Again, it has the abstract at the top. Research articles are usually longer than articles you're going to find on the internet, but there's a lot more detail. So here's some history of the laws. A lot of that could be good for the introduction, which we're going to talk more about in lesson 25. The method is how they conducted the research. So you might read a little bit about that. And the conclusion is the most effective, is the most important part. So for a research article, always read your introductions and your conclusions. Those are probably the most important sections to read. So there's a good example of an article. So let's go back here for a second. Back to the abstract page of this article. So a couple other things you can do here is you can download the article. And once you download it, you can either print it or save it from there. You can also print this page, or you can email it. If you forgot your flash drive, click the email and it'll allow you to email this page to yourself. Plus you can cite, right? This is a really great feature right here. This cite feature. If you click this button, it'll show you exactly how to cite it in APA reference citation style. So if you like this article, you can just copy and paste this reference citation into a Word file and you won't have to create the reference page by hand. So that's a really nice feature of using the online library. And I would definitely recommend, as you find articles, make sure you grab the reference citations too. So that's how you sort of manage the articles and the citations as you're finding the articles. As we could see from this search, the best way to find good results is to constantly change your keywords if you're having issues with your keywords. Make sure you limit the date over here. Otherwise, I think that's probably the best way to search around for topics, is by using this search all subjects. Again, you could go straight to the ebrary if you have something. I think you get good results here. We didn't get a lot of books. We could just take a quick look at the ebrary. So if we click ebrary, this brings us into our electronic books. You do have to put in your username and password. It's just your first name dot your last name, and your password is the same password for your email, which is usually your student ID. Here it goes to the books. We could do a simple search on sex offenders. You want to keep your searches a little bit broader for electronic books. This is not quite as specific, but sex offenders and self-control explaining sexual violence. That could be a great book right there. Maybe why sex offenders commit the offenses. Increased surveillance, impacts on recidivism. That's great. That's exactly what we're looking for right here, which is how does the increased surveillance help to curb sex offender. So we can actually click this and go straight to the book itself. We can read the book online, or we can do the full download. Here's the book, right? It has chapters. So if we go to the table of contents, here are the chapters. We can jump to different chapters: recidivism, theory, sexual behavior and deviancy, sex offender management statuses, impacts of increased surveillance. So I wouldn't discount books. This actually looks like a fantastic book. You know, you might not have time to get to it, but you might just read a chapter or two in a book like this and I think use it. So definitely don't discount books. And the ebrary is a great place to look for some good books. So there's one. There's a nice one right there. Let's go back to the home page. So there's the ebrary. You can jump to some of these other databases. There's a link to try Google Scholar. I haven't had much luck with that though. Mostly I would try this. If you're not getting what you want, make sure you change your keywords. Make sure you separate your keywords by and try the limiters with the date, and make sure you grab your citations from your articles. But that's it. You know, otherwise you just want to practice searching around, and I think you'll have you know, good luck. And if you get trouble with it, you know, you can always stop by and we can talk a little bit more about it. But that's using the online library and using Google. A couple things to keep in mind when you're researching. So let's just flip back to the PowerPoint here. So there was a couple of examples of using the online library and Google to find good results. So let's wrap it up real quick. So you can use Google when you're researching, but also consider using the online library. You find good sources there, and when you get into Writing 102, you're going to have to use that. So you want to get comfortable with it. In the online library, keywords are very essential, separating them with and, right? Narrow by date and source type. Use the cite feature to get citations from your articles. So now that this lesson's done, I want you to move on and complete Journal 6. So for Journal 6, as I talked about, I want you to choose 3 research questions, or 3 potential topics, and hone those as 3 research questions, or research question each. Then pick the one question that you like the best, and try to find 3 articles or sources that speak to that question. So like I said, you can use Google, but I want you to try to find at least one from the CCOL. All right? Try to find at least one article from the online library. So do that, and then email it to me at brooks.winchell@go.cambridgecollege.edu. Wait for my response, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible, and then you can move on. But that's it for this lesson. So work on Journal 6, and then you can move on to the next lessons, which will be designing your research and synthesizing sources. And I'll see you there.